Let's get started. What are the key components of before you get started with your CV? It's such an important thing. Please, you can see, there are a lot of critical issues. But before you start even thinking about building a CV, there are a few basic questions that you need to ask as a person. Uh, are you ready to make the move, including am I ready to type the right word? Are you ready to move to the next country, to a new country? Are you ready to adapt a new culture? Are you ready to adapt a new environment as we speak? So these are some really, really crucial questions. And of course, that leads to the second and third point of it. Are you ready to move with your family or without your family? There are some certain countries that are putting really big time restrictions, China being one of them, where the selected person can only go, the selected appointee can only reach China, no one else from the family yet, unless with any other exceptions. If your partner has got a job, yes, why not? So please do check out these questions. What are your personal priorities? This is something very important to pick up. Relocating. Are you willing to relocate? And it connects with the same first question. Are you ready to relocate? Are you ready to really want to move, or you want to stay? If you are staying, what are you doing for your school?
Yeah, one of probably the most important thing, if you're looking for your first international school or even moving international schools, is one of the things to think about, and is actually the precarious nature of being an international school teacher. Yeah. Tristan Burnell has done a lot of research into what the role of an international school teacher really is about, and it's worth actually checking that out. He's at Bath University and has done quite a lot of research into it. But generally, it's regarded that being an international school teacher is precarious. However, there's the other side of it. One of the things that's really important within international school teaching is flexibility, the ability to actually be able to sustain, absorb, be resilient, have grit, be able to tap into social and emotional learning. So if it is your first move outside of home country, not every teacher really is designed to be an international school teacher. Yes, that is a very important thing to think about. Yeah, I've personally, in the last 20 years, I've been in, it's now 11 schools. Yeah, in leadership, that's a fairly average turnover. Yeah, so it's one of the things to think about, and yeah, and also, what do you want to get out of it? Yeah, I think that's very, very important. Yeah, if you think you're going to have a holiday on the beach, you shouldn't be going.
Let's get on to our next very crucial steps. Now, before you build, again, we are on that phase where you are going to build your CV, but as we speak, currently we are focusing on what are the steps that are needed before we think about building our CV. It's very important that we all display as an educator, it's very important to understand what research has to say in our subject areas, in education, in classroom teaching, in community. What kind of research is available for us to understand? So you have to be a research-based, evidence-based educator. But also, looking at that, there is colleagues that I have interacted with, they always said, no, I just care about teaching what happens inside the classroom. But unbelievably, I'm sure Ms. Ashika and Mr. Nigel would also agree with me, there are external influences that really impact teaching. Ms. Ashika, are there anything that you would like to add?
Yeah, so it is not just teaching when you apply in an international school. You also have to think about how you will be helping the students in pastoral care. How will you be useful in becoming different supervisors? If it is an IB school, then if you are a PYP educator, how will you help as a PYP exhibition mentor? How will you help as a CAS supervisor. So all these additional things are also there. It's not like you are just hired for teaching your subject and you are done. It's not that. Also, in some schools, you are also required to volunteer for after school activities. So what are you good at? What activities can you take? So these are also important points that school look for in applicants.
Wonderful point, and these are very crucial point. And adding to that, visibility matters. Any thoughts that we might have picked up?
There's a couple of questions actually that we have for you, Vishal.
Great. Yeah, sure.
Excuse me. Sorry. Firstly, before we go into building the CV, what are some of the different certificates required that can substitute the visa requirements?
It depends from country to country. It's very important to assess the country requirements. But let's say for Middle East, for example, one of the top requirements is obviously, just like any other country, have a teaching certificate. But not only that, but also all of your studies, degrees, diplomas have to be full-time, full-time process, in the sense all of your studies, certificates, diplomas, when you apply to schools in Middle East, they must reflect that you have attended full-time classes. It cannot be distance learning, or it cannot be part-time. So that's one of the key requirements. Our top advice would be, please do your research when you apply to a specific country. You will get to know through your school, but however, sometimes schools do take time to reply you back, because they either check your papers with the ministries or authorities or local relevant authorities, and they come back to you. So in between, instead of, I would say, letting time pass, please go through some of the government websites, immigration websites, try to know what are the requirements. Indonesia, 5 years, minimum 5 years experience in the subject that you taught. Degree, I think, Mr. Nigel, a degree required on that specific subject. Vietnam is the same thing, mirroring exactly what's happening in Indonesia. And most important aspect, that, as we say, please make sure whether that country is eligible. I mean, if you are eligible to apply to that particular country, even though if you have done some of your studies online or through distance education. Now, getting to building our CV. Now, there are some important elements that we need to consider, and this is something where we are going to share an example of Mr. Nigel's CV as we get across. Before that, there are certain things that absolutely very important to consider. Number one, formatting really matters, because when we speak about formatting, really there has been a new software that has been put in place for a few years already, but we are not aware of that until recently through many sources. But this practice has been going on in the corporate sector of around the world. So CVs are being built to accommodate the applicant tracking system, which is the ATS, because it's a software that actually recognizes, built by artificial intelligence, or you may call it robotic techniques, that will pick up essential keywords that will match the position that's being advertised. I'm going to explain you more as we speak. So having said that, it's extremely important that you keep your information accurate. Accuracy at this stage is so important. And we don't want confusing information or contradicting information, or something that will not bring value to the when you present. Because sometimes, if I'm not wrong, that as three of us as experienced principals and heads, we sometimes, when we get to see a CV, we say, okay, here is a person that could create an impact, but there are some points that I'm not sure, and I would like to discuss that during interviews. So I do pick up on that. Guess what? Sometimes it just doesn't work. So we are going to explain you more as we go. References. I cannot emphasize more anymore. I'm sure Ms. Ashika and Mr. Nigel will agree with us. Professional, existing, and up-to-date current references, professional references. People who have observed you, people who you have worked with, people who have managed you, supervised you, let's say your principals, head of department, these are the people. I'm not talking about your friends. That's completely different. That's out of the question right now. Any additional input from you, Ms. Ashika and Mr. Nigel, please? Thank you.
So I would want to reiterate what you have said, that when you have any references, it has to be your line manager. You cannot say that, okay, you know me, so please will you be my referee. You should have worked under that person for the credibility of the reference. So that is very important, I would like to add. Yeah, because I have received so many CVs where you have given your friend or maybe your acquaintance as your reference. Because I can see that, right, where you have worked and where this person has worked. And in the international job market, it is not a very big, we know people. When you can ask and you come to know that whether the reference is genuine or not.
Nigel, when you come across as head of school, when you come across references, or what are your takes on this?
I've got a slightly different one, because I'm going to picture in terms of in terms of the role that you're going to apply for as well. So the deeper the role, the more I'm going to want out of the reference in some ways. Yeah. So I would not advise sending ready written references with a CV, because I'm going to want to check. I'm going to want it directly from the person that you're using as a referee. I'm not going to, because the things may have changed since they wrote that. Yeah. So I'm going to want an up-to-date one. Yeah. I tend to also ask for at least a faculty reference as well, and quite often a parent reference. Now, that's not unusual in leading international schools. Yeah. If you're looking for a leadership position, so a coordination type position or something like that, I am probably going to want 2 faculty references, 3 professional references, and a student reference as well, and a student parent reference. And that goes back to this idea of, you are there, I'm going to be honest with you, you are there to educate. So I want to know that you can educate, not just teach. And the 2 things are not the same. Yeah, I can put a chimpanzee in a mortarboard and they'll teach you something, but a chimpanzee is not likely to educate you anything. Yeah, and it is very much like that. So you will find that some schools will look very, very much look like that. So you might be asked for more than just the standard sort of 3 professional references, and I will counter the idea that they need to be directly up to date. They need to be the people sometimes that will actually know you the best in the role that you are going for. So when I apply for a role as a principal or a head of school, I actually use a former head of school who has been retired for the last 5 years. In that position, that is a worthwhile reference to have. So it may be that you have a reference from somebody from a couple of years ago that knew you in a very particular role, that you're applying for a similar sort of role now. That is still a worthwhile reference to put in there.
Absolutely, I can't agree more with both of you as we speak. It's very, very important. Please do understand the value of your referees and the value that you bring in. Sometimes I have encountered some of our colleagues that, they just they burn bridges with their previous school or current school just because they want to move on. Please do remember that sometimes it's so important to maintain a positive and healthy relationship. Whether you agree, disagree, that's altogether a different story. But when you cite somebody as a referee, let's say your previous principal or head of school, you are putting up a trust. And trust is built across positive relationships. And when we speak about positive relationships, it also means you build that relationship with trust, honesty, and transparency. So when I say these 3 heavy sounded words, they have to be put into practice, you as an educator. So that's why that reflects also completing the contract professionally, abiding by the contract that you sign, making sure that if something is not working, as we say, what was that golden piece of advice, Ms. Ashika, as you say, if something is not working, we can move forward. We are not trees, but make sure that we are abiding the contract technically.
Sorry, Michelle. Yeah, the reason I put this up, and as you can see, that it's a CV for a leadership position. Yeah, but the same rules apply no matter what. The format that I use is a little bit different to what's commonly used, but it's still a format that is picked up by automatic reading systems. Yeah, the reason I use this format is because there's a lot of information. It actually works better than a straight page format. But the one on the left, as you look at it, automatically turns people off for two reasons. There's two things that are wrong with it. The first thing that is wrong with it, there is too much in there, whereas the one on the right only really focuses on the last 4 or 5 positions. Yeah. Now, for some people, that may be the last 2 or 3. Yeah. So you wanted to focus on what represents you the best. Yeah. The other thing that's very, very different is that the little bit of blurb underneath each position, the one on the left is what have I done? Whereas the one on the right is what impact did I have? And quite often, going back to what I said earlier, I see so many CVs from teachers with actually quite a lot of experience that don't tell me anything about the impact they've actually had. They only tell me this list of things that they've done. And realistically, I really want teachers that are going to make an impact, that are going to make a difference. So be very, very clear. The other thing that's quite modern in it is you do not need to include your address on a CV. Yeah, I'm not going to write to you. I'm going to email you. So you don't need to include your address on a CV. But please, definitely, if you've got a Skype or something like that, a Skype or a WhatsApp number, put that on there, because that's really, really useful. Yeah. Because the likelihood that somebody will want to have that, yeah. So date of birth, nationality. I'm British, but I actually live in France, which for some, like for India, that causes no end of problem. India does not understand the idea that I do not live in my father's house in another country, that I live in France, yeah. And it creates also, so I have to put, so I make sure that's on CV so the schools can actually, if it's a problem for a school, they're flagged immediately. Yeah, and you might get rejected because you are a problem for that school. It doesn't mean to say you're not a good teacher. Yeah, but some schools, depending where they are, you may be a problem, and therefore your CV will automatically read, which is better than going all the way down the line of getting an offer and then finding out that you're a problem.
Absolutely, this is such an important aspect to consider. And now I would like to pick up any questions on this aspect. Ethan, are there any advice?
Absolutely. So we've talked a little bit about written resumes, but a question that we had earlier, and which I think works now, is what is the acceptance of video resumes while applying overseas? Or what would you advise about video resumes in the first place, I guess?
Great question. I would like to take two different perceptions over here. I would like to invite first Mr. Nigel and then jump into Ms. Ashika. Thank you. Nigel.
I like them, but I've also worked in systems where they're part of the application system. Yeah. Reading a lot of CVs, and I tend to read CVs. I don't tend to let HR read CVs. HR are probably the worst people in the world for looking at CVs because they don't really know what they're looking for. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
And so I tend to spend a lot of time reading CVs. It is highly unlikely I'm going to follow a link. But if I see links there, and I'm then going to trust that those links exist. Yeah. Yeah. Oddly, later on, if I employ you and those links don't exist, then that becomes a problem. Yeah. But so if you're going to put that sort of link in, make sure these. So if the system calls for it, I think they're very, very good ways of doing things.
So the big question: what interviews are all about? And this is something that we always have to look into. It's all about right fit, right match. Sometimes, you know, there are a lot of elements that go into interview rounds, such as can be personal, contextual, about your role, about mechanisms, experience. So, and it's at the end, we are looking for the right fit as well. I'm just going to quickly add to this, and then I'm going to invite once again Ashika and Nigel into the conversation. What does an interview sound like? An interview sound like? And this is something that it's such an important aspect that when we speak about it, it's all about, as we said, it's all about your research, your flexibility, your punctuality, or your personality. Everything goes into the conversation, and you can actually evaluate the quality of conversation that you have with your people. So, when you interview different schools. Let's look at the second dimension, perception. Ms. Ashika, your thoughts on this one?
I totally agree with what Nigel says, that if you have been called for an interview, that means we have looked through your CV and we see some potential, in you. And now we want to have that conversation, like whether we have taken the right decision to call in for you and for an interview. So that is for sure, that if you are called for an interview, then there is a chance that you will be selected, right? Otherwise, we sit and skim and scan through many CVs. So yeah, that point I totally agree with Nigel. Again, when the interviewer asks you a question, that do you have any question to ask? So I feel that the interviewee should have some questions to ask, because that is the chance that the school has given you, that you think about what questions are there, or what questions could be, for you to know whether it is salary, whether it is holidays, whether it is teaching time, or whether it is, how much of workload or whatever. Those kind of questions should be asked. You should not think that what will the interviewer think, teachers don't take, or viewers don't take that time to ask those questions to the school. And then you land up and you feel like, okay, where am I stuck,
Now, moving on into our second last bits and pieces of this conversation, it's very important when you apply to a particular school, because you are just not applying to the position advertised. Not only that, but also you are selecting a school. But before you select a school, do your research of it. Location, will you be happy? Will you be able to adapt? Do some research on YouTube, do some networking. You may want to call your local embassies to consult about a particular country. They may give you, and they always happen to be very resourceful networking. Obviously, it's embassy, they represent the country in your country. This is, I found very useful, but looking at a school, you must always just make sure that what are their values? Is it your type of school that you're looking for? Will you enjoy teaching there? Have a look at sometimes at staff and leadership profile. Is it diverse? So these are some of the questions that do cross our mind, and when we select a school. Any thoughts on this one, Ms. Ashika and Mr. Nigel, please?
Yeah, I think it's very, very important that you do the background. It's very obvious when somebody's just sending out a generic application letter, without having put any thought in it. I do not teach in schools that have Cambridge. I have never taught in schools that have Cambridge, and I do that on purpose. I teach inside the IB continuum, and I lead inside the IB continuum. So if you're going to send me an application letter that tells me about how much Cambridge experience you've got, I'm not really going to read it. But if you tell me about that you've got Cambridge experience and you really want to move into the NYP because you see the benefits of it and the experience that you've had in Cambridge in doing this in a different way to the normal rote type learning that Cambridge sort of elicits, that's going to interest me. Yeah, because my mission in life is to actually close Cambridge and make every school in the world an IB continuum school. Yeah, that's an IB part of me. So if you actually do the research and find out that the person that you're likely to be applying to is a continuum person, but you talk about nothing but Cambridge, the likelihood is that you're not really going to get past the door. The opposite is the same. If you're applying to a Cambridge school and you've got an NYP background and you talk about nothing but NYP and how wonderful it is, you are probably also not going to get through the front door. So you've got to be really, really specific. Also look at the mission of the school.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What about you fits with the mission of the school? Yeah.
Absolutely. And here is a very, very interesting question from Jayashree coming up, is that to both Nigel and Ashika, is that what is the panel's opinion on IB schools that conduct written preliminary rounds that focus only on the content of the subject? So what is our take on that one?
I'm going to bite my tongue a little bit because the IB is not a content-based program. None of the programs are content-based. Yeah. But I can also understand why schools would actually want to know about the ability of people to teach it. So recently I've worked with a couple of schools in India that are opening, and they are mainly looking at actually taking teachers from CBSE. One of the things they're looking for, one of the biggest problems they have is actually in mathematics, because it is chalk and cheese, the expectations of what students should be able to do. So they are actually looking, the main thing for mathematics is actually looking at what the teachers who are applying studied in their degree, not what they've been teaching, it's what they've studied. So there's a lot to be, so in terms of that, yeah, the content of what you did in that situation, that's very, very similar. But personally, I am looking for educators, not teachers.
At some schools that you may look into any different international schools, but right from UWC to Tashkent International School, or or International School of Kenya, whenever you have some time, please do browse and surf the school websites. These are just examples. There are X number of international schools, but you could see, I'm sure Ashika and Nigel would agree, the website says everything about a school. Nigel, what's your take, and Ms. Ashika as well?
So when you look at all IB schools, they have all their policies there, right? They are transparent. So you know what kind of assessment policy or SEN inclusion policy or admission policy. By reading all those policies, you come to know, right, what the school is about. So it is just a matter of just going to that website and reading and doing some homework before you really want to go and apply for that particular school. So I think all IB schools, at least international schools, they keep their websites updated, especially now during these times when there is COVID happening and you need admissions, then schools put up, keep their websites updated.
Absolutely, and this is such an essential part to look around, understand. It's a whole process before you apply to that particular school. It's just not looking at the ad, looking at the address that you have to send, and that's it. No, because all of these questions, and we as let it be myself as a secondary principal, or for Nigel as a head of school, or Ms. Ashika herself as academic director, that we look at why have you applied to our school, and we are taking the interest and the time and energy to talk to you as well. So on this note, we are offering you 4 keywords. Perhaps we may have to add some more as we speak. The 4 keywords: polish, just not your profile, but you yourself as an individual educator, professional educator, polishing your skills, your professionalism, you are leading by example to a community where you are setting the tone, because students do look up to you, and all of those heard keywords. But here it's all about polishing yourself, who you are, networking by being visible, by offering value to the community, but also when you get that interview round conversation, it's very important. Build relationships with your colleagues. When I say colleagues, we include the leadership team members, the senior management of the school. They are all your colleagues, and of course, enjoy And on that note, Ms. Ashika, any keyword there from your end that you would like to add?
Yeah, I would again say networking is important and being visible also. Right now there is no reason where you can say that you cannot be visible. There are so many groups, so many WhatsApp groups, so many Facebook groups that you can join for international teachers, uh, where you will be updated not only of the different curricula but also about recruitment, also about service. Okay, so you cannot say that I have no network or I don't know people. So that cannot be. I know of so many CBSE and ICSE teachers also who have joined the networks on the different platforms on Facebook, right? Vishal, you know
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so when they are so open to learning, then I think when you are visible and when you share your experiences, then the recruiters also see you.
Go, and here comes the last part of this conversation. What happens next? Some key resources that you could actually enjoy. We have Harvard University and MIT University offering some really great resources, some action verbs, some resume templates. I'm happy to actually just show them quickly to you how it goes, and then I'm just going to unshare this a bit, and I'm going to show you this the screen as well. So let's say, for example, just taking a bit of time on that note. Yes, sorry, sometimes technology just gets the best out of you at times. There we go. I'm ready to share the screen once again. Here it comes. A few seconds. Here you go. Howard offers you completely the resources that you can look for, and look at that. Different, again, not all of them are ideal for teaching and education sector, but they just give you what are the top 6 resume mistakes. What should be a resume language? What are the do's and the don'ts? So do watch out for that link that is there. And they do have loads of action verbs. But again, you have to make sure as an educator that those action verbs match with what you have actually done in your school. They should not sound superficial or out of this world. And Nigel and Ashika, your final thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think one of the things, and I'm going to coach this very, very much inside the IB as a community. Yeah, the IB 10 is a community of not just learners, but educators. And every student is capable of doing the IB or an IB program. So every teacher is capable of becoming an IB educator. And it's really about understanding that community part of it to actually make progress. Now, schools are not just community, schools are generally also businesses. Yeah. So don't be upset by rejection. It's part and parcel of the process. Be flexible, which leads back to what Vishal was saying, that the flexibility comes through by being realistic about what you are and who you are. Yeah. Some of the best teachers I've ever employed have been introverts, and they've told me they've been introverts. That's in their personal life, but inside a school community, they are probably some of the most extrovert people in the joy of sharing their subject. Language teachers in particular tend to be sometimes quite introvert people, but when the joy that they get out of talking about either literature or the formation of language makes them, yeah, but quite often they don't talk about that in their CV. Yeah, and it's those sorts of things to highlight.
Absolutely. And what else could we enjoy with the conversation and the rich experience that both of you carry for our audience? And on that note, I would just like to reshare the screen again. So about one of our key free resources that is available. It's, when I say our, means it's available for all of us, everyone in this world. It's called cultivatedculture.com. You create a free account, free of cost, where you build your CV. Please do not go on this one because I've just prepared this example to show you, as you can see, that you can have step-by-step everything. They help you out. These are all free of cost. Test your CV, and this is something what I've done in the past is I have actually picked up a job description of a middle school principal, and I matched it with my CV to see whether that information in the job description matches with my CV. Some said, yes, it matches. You will have a chance, 60% of chance to get the interview. Some said, no, this is not your type of school. So don't attempt if you want to apply, but don't attempt. So they give you those advices for free of cost. It's a great little tool that you could use as well. And of course, I'm going to take back the screen for our last part of it, which is, please do have a look at some very well-known placement agencies, right from Search, Scroll, International School Services, TIE, GRC. These are all websites. Of course, you have to pay for a membership fee, but all of these have, including, I will include teacherhorizons.com as well. All of these aspects, they share a common point, that is, accurate references. What have you done for your schools? Where have you been so far? How does it reflect you as a professional individual? So there are many others who are that is becoming available for all of us in the market to get placed. But these are actually some of the very, they are well known in their field so far. But do have a look at it. It's not at all we are influencing in any other way. On that note, any final thoughts, Nigel and Ashika, before we end this conversation for this evening? Ms. Ashika, your thoughts on all of these conversation part?
Yeah, it's a good idea to at least go to one of these fairs. I took an experience. At least and also if you want to know what your market price is, that is important. So maybe at least try once.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say. Yeah.
Great. And on that note, to finish this off, Facebook groups, International Teachers on the Move. It's a dedicated group that a lot of teachers are asking questions about particular schools or reviews or anything like that. But as Nigel and Ashika pointed out earlier, that there will be always a group of unhappy teachers who will always complain about particular school. And and there are many other teachers. It takes a lot of teachers to convince one teacher that it's a good school. So it's a reality. And on that note, I would now like to invite any additional question from our audience before we finish this conversation for the next 5 minutes. Anyone, please. Jayashree or Pooja, anyone, would you like to ask any questions? I think we are good on that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pooja.
Right.
Really appreciate that. Jay, we got Jayashree's question as well answered. Great. On that note, thank you so much. Thank you, Jayashree. Thank you, Pooja, and everybody who joined us this evening. And thank you very, very much, Ashika and Nigel, for sharing your valuable experience.
Thank you, Vishal, for hosting.
Thank you. And also, of course, a big thank you to Ethan and Ascend family for reaching out to educators around the world. Ethan, any additional note before we depart from your end, please?
I think that's a lovely way to end it. It's been a wonderful conversation and we've gained a lot of insight, I'm sure, especially with a view of those resources at the end, which are going to be really, really helpful for us as educators, just in terms of looking for new jobs, if you are interested in that in the first place. Anyway, thank you for your time, Vishal, Nigel, and Shekhar. Thank you for your time, attendees.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Good evening and happy, a happy and safe weekend. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good day.